Hi guys, Mr. Berardo again, just trying to get you your bi-weekly update. Trying to do this 2 times a week for you so you can see what we're going to be doing. We're going to start talking about the causes of the Civil War now. There are some issues that we're going to have to go over. Some of them are going to be reviewed. Some of them are going to be for the first time if you're ever going to be seeing them. Hopefully we'll be able to get through them. I have no idea what my grading is going to look like, so don't even ask me right now. I'm waiting for the district to make a decision. But let's talk about the road to the Civil War. And I put it down there. It all falls apart. Everything we talked about so far this year, the Great Compromise and the 3/5 Compromise and the Bill of Rights, all of it's going to come apart in the next couple of in this whole fiasco right before the Civil War, the antebellum period in the South, and the issues of right before the Civil War. So early problems, we kind of talked about this, the tariff abominations and the nullification crisis. The states feel they have the right to nullify all these different things. A tariff is a tax on imported goods. The states feel they have the right to do it. It's going to be that process. Remember we talked about Andrew Jackson. That is one of those things that happened during Andrew Jackson's term as president, and he brought in the federal. He basically told South Carolina, if you don't do this, so I'm going to send in the federal troops, and that's going to be your problem. And South Carolina said, no, we don't really want to mess with the United States Army, and they backed down. They're not really so worried about it right now. I don't know why it's doing it. It's making all sorts of weird things over there. You see that? It's kind of weird. Anyway, that's kind of what we're saying. South Carolina obeys about 32 years before the Civil War actually happens. This nullification crisis happens, and this is South Carolina basically saying, we don't want to listen to the federal government. We want to do what South Carolina wants to do, and Jackson kind of says, no, you're going to have to follow us and do what we have to do. This is going to be at least plant the seed that South Carolina and other states are ready to leave and get ready to go. The Missouri Compromise. Missouri wants to become a state. We have something called the balance of power that I'm going to try and get you guys to read about this week. But when you talk about, look at what a scale is. I know you guys have looked at something in science. When the scale gets too heavy on one side has the advantage. When it goes to the other side has the advantage. You want to make sure that the scales, especially when it comes to politics, are fairly equal, so no side feels like they're losing out. This compromise, we're arguing that we want to have Missouri come in as a state, and it's basically to say it's going to give the South an unfair advantage in Congress. So when it comes down to the Senate, the South is going to have, because Missouri wants to come in as a slave state. Slave state, it says it right there. But if Missouri comes in, it means the South is going to come in and it's going to tilt the scales toward the slave side. And we don't want that, or the North doesn't want that to happen. So we have to come up with this idea. While all this debating is going on, the South is coming, the state of Maine, the territory of Maine is going to ask to become a state. So that balance of power where it's going to tilt to one side, all of a sudden it's going to go back to even again. So we have to make sure, they make sure that everything is cool and everything is equal. So that one side, either pro-slavery or anti-slavery, is not going to have one group or one advantage, okay? So they come up with a compromise, and guess what it's called? The Missouri Compromise. I know, that's very ingenious, isn't it? Missouri enters as a slave state, Maine enters as a free state, and they basically say slavery is going to be allowed below the southern. Oh, that's not right. Made a mistake. Oops. Any slavery. Yeah, no, sorry, that is right. Any slavery below the southern border is below the southern border of Missouri, and we're going to show you a picture on a map, hopefully in a couple seconds. That's going to be okay. But in reality, it's only going to be this tiny little piece of land like this, and above it is going to be this broad, huge land, specter of land that's going to be there. It's going to be 3630 north, and I wish I had a map to show you, and I usually pull down the map to show you, but hey, I'm at home. There's no map here. It's not going to magically appear. But hopefully I'll be able to show you on this line. Here you go. Here's Missouri, right here. Here's the compromise line. So if you see, if we drew a line all the way, everything below me could be a slave state. Mexico is basically right here. Everything above that line could be free. So it's going to be really not be all that fair to the slave states. But here's Missouri coming in as 1821, Maine coming in as 1826. Basically, the same, right around the same amount of time. And everything, what I really need you to understand is that this bottom line of Missouri, if we just took that and just went all the way across, everything below would be slave, everything above my hand would be free. And that's really, it's okay for now because all this land right here is pretty much unorganized and they don't really have a lot of stuff in there. But sooner or later, California's going to pop up over here. Oregon, Washington State, the Dakotas are going to come in over here, and there's going to be a whole bunch of other states eventually. It's going to take some time, but we're going to see that that compromise is not really going to work. So, 1849, we're going to see that there's going to be another compromise called the Compromise of 1850 because California wants to come in as a free state. Talked about the gold rush and people moving across, and there's going to be a whole bunch of people in California. They're going to try and apply to be a state. If they come in, there's not really no other place for them to really, there's no other state to come in or no other territory to really apply. They don't have the numbers yet. But California wants to come in as a free state. So they're going to come up with another compromise. California comes in as a free state. Utah and New Mexico are created as territories. There's going to be no slave trade in Washington, D.C., and the biggest and most important part is a fugitive slave law. That is huge. Basically, what that's going to say is this fugitive slave law, if a slave escapes, it is your obligation, it is your duty. It is your duty to go out. I said duty again. It is your duty to go out and capture the slaves and make sure that they come back. But that is by far the most important part. Okay? All right. So the fugitive slave law goes along with the Compromise of 1850. It is the most important part. If I were to give you a test with multiple choice questions, it would say what's the most controversial, most important part of the Compromise of 1850? It's going to say the fugitive slave law. It requires all citizens to return slaves. If you helped a runaway escape, you could, if you helped a runaway at all, a runaway slave at all, you could be fined and or jailed. Fined up to $1,000. You can go to jail for probably somewhere close to 6 months. They set up special courts. If you help a slave, if a slave is or a person's captured, you would get $10 for returning them and $5 for setting them free. Judges would get that. So in reality, if you were a judge, you might want to start thinking about padding your retirement a little bit and getting some more money so you can get $10. And then right around that time, probably a couple $1,000. So it's a decent amount of money. This is going to cause a whole bunch of problems between the North and the South. And it really is going to be an issue. You should have seen some of this when you watched the movie Race to Freedom, the one where they were talking about the Underground Railroad. This was definitely a part of it. They spoke about it in the very first scene, so you should have an idea of what we're talking about there. Another problem is going to be his book called Uncle Tom's Cabin, written in 1852 by a woman named Harriet Beecher Stowe, who actually had relatives that lived in my hometown. In Brewster, in New York. And she is going to be a writer, and this book is going to deal with the cruelties and the harshness of slavery. People in the North are going to look at it and be like, oh my God, I can't believe it's so horrible, and oh my God, how could this happen, and this is the worst thing ever, and you people in the South should be ashamed. And people in the South are going to be like, this Yankee woman has no idea what she's talking about. It's not like this. Slavery isn't like this. But it is going to be the second most popular book in the 1800s, only to the Bible. So, I mean, it's going to be read by a lot of people. People are going to read this, and there's a whole big story. If you want to look at it, if I could find videos of it, I don't know if you really want to watch it, but I will try and find some videos of it or something that relates to it to get you guys to see what it is. But understand that people are going to start to read. Then you have the other reformers going around talking about who's doing bad things to the slaves and how these poor slaves are being treated. Now you're having books, and it's just getting, it tells you it's somewhere like, 270,000 volumes sold. That's a lot of people. We don't really have as many people in the United States then as we do now. So this is being read a lot. This is going to be an important book. This is going to be some of the only information people get about slavery. So it's going to be a big deal. This is the end of our lesson until Tuesday or Wednesday. We're in the 4th marking period now, so make sure you're getting to do it. If you see some people that you haven't seen, change that. If you talk to people, some people that you haven't talked to, and say, hey, you're doing Mr. Berardo's work, make sure it gets done. We are getting closer to the end of the year. We are going to start talking about, we have basically 3 more topics. This is going to go fairly quick, and we're going to get into the American Civil War rather quickly. I need you guys to really focus on this because it's fairly important. I'm hoping you're all well. I'm hoping you're all safe, and I'll see you soon. All right? Bye.